A lot of money is being invested into legal tech, especially in the past 2 years.
And companies are further ahead in digital transformation compared to law firms.
Yeah.
They, generally they're going through digital transformation. So they don't view it perhaps as law firms do as purely legal tech. They just view it as digital adoption of tools that make their lives easier.
So from the corporate perspective, has the demand for employees with a legal tech base improved?
Small digital firms, which don't need an office maybe.
Yeah.
They're fully online, they have fully remote workforces. They can be very profitable.
Hello, welcome to Tech for Legal. Welcome to another episode. And today I will be your host. And joining us is Jeremy Small. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Rodina.
So, Jeremy, just a bit of a background. You are the founder and CEO of Jameson Legal. It's an award-winning international legal recruitment company and legal tech consultancy with offices in Singapore, in London, in Abu Dhabi, and in Hong Kong. Your clients include top US and UK law firms, sovereign wealth funds, fast-growing tech companies, and major corporates. You had previously pursued a legal career with two major law firms in London, including working as a private equity and mergers and acquisitions lawyer. But you moved into legal recruitment in 2004. So you worked initially in Singapore before establishing Jameson Legal in 2010. Together with your colleagues, you've launched Jameson Legal Tech in 2021 to provide an advisory consultancy working with legal tech companies to help them grow a global client base within the legal sector. And in that same year, you were honored to be appointed as a UK ambassador to the European Legal Tech Association. Currently, you are now an advisor to and investor in a number of exciting legal and legal tech companies that include Connected and MediaBrain. So, Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have
Rodina.
you been?
Great to be here. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good. So, let's start with moving from practicing law to recruitment to legal tech. How did that happen? What did you see to make that move?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey for me, to be honest with you. So I began life as a lawyer. I sort of followed that road that my colleagues and my friends were following to get into a legal career. And I started off actually with a shipping law firm in London, which was a bit interesting. They sent me on a ship for a couple of months, traveling around the world before I started, just to get an understanding of that. And then I worked there for a couple of years before I realized I actually preferred corporate transactional type of work. So I moved to another large firm and started working as a corporate lawyer, which I did for about 3 years, focusing on private equity work, which was very interesting. I realized I wasn't the world's greatest lawyer though, and I wasn't really 100% committed to it. So I was looking for an escape route. And for me, it meant actually moving away from the UK and moving to Singapore, which is where my wife is from, sort of falling into recruitment. And I realized when I fell into legal recruitment, I really enjoyed it from day one. I didn't feel the stress and strains that I did as a lawyer, that I was out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And was sort of hungry to do well. And the timing was great because a lot of law firms were moving international, out to Asia, out to the Middle East. So I actually focused a lot of my work life on placing lawyers in the Middle East and in Asia rather than in London. And was lucky enough to enjoy some good years there before returning to London, and felt it was time to start my own agency, which I did, just working from home on my own, and then slowly over the years adding people to where we are today. And a couple of years ago on the legal tech side, I was fairly clueless about legal tech, but during COVID started to get a bit more of a broader understanding of what was going on and realizing that the world is changing for lawyers.
The push for legal tech became real.
Exactly. So quickly understood that there was potential for us to do something different that our competitors were not doing. And there was also an interest there for me. So we sort of built up this legal tech side to include helping legal tech companies to use our platform and our relationships to meet new clients, essentially, because we have a global client base of legal departments and law firms, and also to help on these new roles that are being created in legal tech as well. So that's another big area for us on recruitment into these areas. And other interesting things, it's kind of an ecosystem that we're getting to know, and a friendly ecosystem because it's still growing, from what is a relatively small base. So
money is being invested into legal tech, especially in the past 2 years. The numbers have really gone up and I think it's the interest behind them, because after COVID, the push for working from home, even for lawyers, became something that was a necessity. So they needed the tech and they needed the regulation to push that tech, because otherwise a lot of companies would have been unable to practice, unable to do anything. So
that's right.
There was a lot of money that was invested in legal tech for the past 2 years.
That's very true. And I think the COVID situation, moved things along maybe 5-10 years ahead of what they would have been. Law firms are very conservative,
very slow to move.
Very slow to move. So if you look at companies generally going through digital transformations, law firms would be right behind that curve, waiting for everyone else to move first. And lawyers are like being in their comfort zone, working, in the way they've practiced for many years.
Something that's very specific to lawyers, right? Nobody else works the same. The rates with lawyers, they're charged differently from any other kind of service, most any kind of service in any industry. I mean, charging per hourly rates is something that's very specific.
It is, actually. And this is something where there's an issue between the adoption of tech and the model which law firms use to charge their clients. So it's actually, in some ways, not in the interests of law firm partners to change their models to cut down the hours they can bill to their clients. Whereas legal tech is about making more efficient, cutting down the hours required to do work. And this is only going to be furthered by the adoption of AI as well. So I think you've got something of a little bit of a fearful law firm environment, but it's totally different with in-house teams, because in-house teams, they have a lot of pressure on them, more and more work thrown their way. Theirs is all about efficiency, moving fast.
They don't have 20, 30, 40 paralegals doing the research and doing all of these things. So they need the tech that helps them, just focus on doing the work that they need to do and let the tech handle the small task, the details, the daily, running.
That's right. And companies are further ahead in digital transformation compared to law firms.
Yeah.
They, generally they're going through digital transformation. So they don't view it perhaps as law firms do as purely legal tech. They just view it as digital adoption of tools that make their lives easier. So law firms are definitely more conservative, and in-house teams are definitely more open to change, I would say.
We've definitely seen the shift from lawyers moving into legal tech. You're one of them. But in recent years, have you seen a lot of people moving their career choices from practicing law into becoming more involved in legal tech and distribution of legal tech and creation of legal tech? So has there been that big shift in careers towards maybe less conservative, the normal practicing law, being in a law firm or being in an in-house, to something that's more exciting, which is creating tools, mainly digital tools, for lawyers to be more efficient?
I would say that with regards to sort of changing careers from practicing lawyers into legal technologists or areas which are very focused on legal tech, it hasn't quite happened yet. Most of the roles that we see tend to be either non-lawyers or people that have only practiced a short while, focusing on that route and becoming important in their firm, but they're still not considered to be as important as the very high multi-million-dollar billing partners, if you like.
And they're younger, right? So it's still on the younger
Generally, yes. So I think there are lots of jobs being created at a lower level, at a more junior level. So firms are definitely seeing that technology is important, and they're looking to change their practices, but they're tending to do it by expecting their IT practices or maybe an innovation manager to drive that. And they don't necessarily have the budgets to pay a lot of money for people to be coming into these roles. So they tend to be quite junior roles, paid less than newly qualified lawyers, certainly. There's also a bit of a lack of education as well. There isn't one course that people can do to become a legal technologist.
I was going to ask you about that a bit later, about the shift in recruitment as well. So this shift is a bit similar to something I've experienced on the marketing side, right? So when we go back 5, 6, 7 years, digital marketing was very obscure, something that was very minimal, even budget-wise, when we were doing budgeting. So you wouldn't really devote that much of the budget towards digital. However, within 2 years, suddenly 80% of your budget went towards digital, and practically no one within those departments knew how that really went because we used to outsource it. Or they were, like you said, those junior people that were dealing with the digital side. And now, within 5-6 years, the corporate side, the retail side, especially after COVID, went really down. So digital went up. And then you had to re-educate yourself on this technology. And it's a very fast-moving technology as well. And the tools you use in that technology are ever-changing, even now with the inclusion of AI, which is going everywhere. So I do understand that it's very hard to shift these mentalities, especially for dinosaurs, like those huge law firms globally. But are you seeing in recruitment, are they asking for that? So when those big law firms and those big in-house companies, and they come to you and, okay, we need to recruit so and so and so, are some of the talents required something related to legal tech? Are they asking for more people that understand legal tech and have worked in it, or they know how to deploy it? So from the corporate perspective, has the demand for employees with a legal tech base improved?
It certainly has. I think it's got a long way to go because I think a lot of the law firms don't quite know what they need. They are maybe further back in their journey as well in terms of a transformation, bringing in tech. We're still at the early days. So you see a great diversity between different law firms as to their understanding of tech, how important they see it, what tools they've deployed, what people they've hired. You can see some very large, impressive, very profitable firms doing a lot in the space. So you look at someone like ClearyX, they've created their own entity, which is going to be developing all of their own tools. That's one way of going, down that road. There are other Magic Circle firms or very large firms who are putting huge resources into it. You can find others that are way back in that and haven't really done anything.
Even when in those big firms.
Yeah, even in some big firms. Although I would say that definitely over the last couple of years, the big firms have caught up and have hired a lot of people, or they brought in consultancies to help them to get to a higher level. But the thing is, it's not just about the law firms. You've got the big four accountancy firms with their own legal arms, very strong in tech, very strong in consultancy. So that's another part of the market which is competitive with the law firms. There are also interesting digital law firms being created. So another big challenger to the sort of incumbent leaders is the small digital firms which don't need an office maybe.
Yeah.
They're fully online, they have fully remote workforces. They can be very profitable. They can offer lawyers what they want in terms of becoming consultants that can work 2-3 days a week. That flexible model is very good to build up a law
And
firm.
they can work remote, so you don't really have to be, you can practice for the UK, you don't have to be in the UK. So you can be anywhere in the world, working remotely, doing the same job that somebody who is working in one of those major corporations and paying, you have the commute and you have the rent. So it's much more profitable for people to work remotely.
Exactly. I think now what is interesting in the market is that tech is allowing someone to create a law firm, create a global law firm very quickly. And that means that the incumbents who have very expensive offices, paying their lawyers hundreds of thousands of dollars with armies of administrative people, can be very unprofitable. They need to have very high charge-up rates to justify all of that. There will always be a market for that.
It will create an imbalance.
There will be. So there is a market. If you are, one of the top global companies, you're still happy to work with the very best lawyers, even if they charge you a fortune. Yeah. But there's a huge number of other law firms that they might, consider not working with if they feel they aren't in that premium space. And so firms need to look at all of the competition between the existing law firms, the big four, the digital law firms that are being created. And I think this space is only going to explode with AI. It's just making it way easier for people to compete with the big boys. And unless they change, there could be a bit of a sea change.
It's equalizing a bit more the markets.
It is. And then you look at the tech companies as well. They're looking at the legal industry, which is probably a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Microsoft, people like that, they're creating their own tools. They could have their own platforms for lawyers to connect to. It's not a big leap to think that tech companies can enter this space as well and become the biggest law firms in the world. So there's so much going on. If you're a law firm partner, you're probably panicking at this point, thinking, where is it all heading?
Especially with AI.
And maybe I'll retire in the next 5 years. So I'm not too worried about it. But I think we'll see a lot of younger people who are very tech savvy becoming leaders in the legal field, which you never would have seen before. It was generally you work your way up, to the top, and then that's it. You enjoy the spoils.
And from the other side, so the new graduates, are they stacking their CVs with legal tech? Is it something that they're trying to learn on their own? Is it something that they're pursuing? So we've seen that they know they need it, they just don't know how they need it yet. So that's the issue with the big corporations. But those employees, they are applying everywhere. I think those employees will see that the need for digital it's crucial, it's imperative. Otherwise, they might lose a spot to somebody who does have that experience that they don't.
Yeah.
Have you seen a lot of those people stacking their CVs with knowledge of legal tech or digital transformation?
I think that there is a great desire from young law graduates or even people without a law degree who are interested in tech and legal tech to find resources that help them to upskill. And it's still not a very well-trodden path. There isn't, one way of doing it to get to a sort of qualified legal technologist position. Often it's getting experience, building up your skill set on a job. So there is a high demand. It's not being served. We also advise a lot of young paralegals or junior lawyers. You should really be investigating tech. If you want to stay ahead and if you want to build a career in the law, you really need to understand what is going on, what are the tools, get experience of using those tools, become an expert really in that, and that will probably catapult you further into the leadership roles in the firm in future. So I think people do want to know, they are keen, but often the law firms themselves don't necessarily invest much in their lawyers to be upskilled in technology. I think there needs to be a big change at the top to understand that their employees should be trained in this because that will make them competitive with the market.
Yeah. Still not with other lawyers, other companies, different rates.
Yeah.
It's going to be charged differently. Anybody that uses technology will use less time and probably focus more on the end result than the small details. So it will cost them less. It will cost the clients less.
That's right. And I think there is a fear as well, with young people coming into the profession, seeing what's happening with ChatGPT and how that's will affect all industry and our lives. If you've been studying the law and it's all been about having that knowledge and then applying that knowledge, if that knowledge is readily available quickly and easily to the mass population, what is your value as a lawyer? So I think that is pervading as well, a bit of a fear factor in the industry. Is the legal profession itself going to have to shrink in the same way as maybe the medical profession or the accountancy profession? Because those knowledge-based industries with AI are going to be massively affected.
Yeah, we'll touch upon the AI in probably another podcast. We'll talk more because it does deserve that whole time to talk about it. Talent acquisition and digitization. So the tools have changed, right? Past few years, post-COVID, the way you interview candidates, the way you assess them online, all of these things have changed. So the new tools, have they helped with time to hire, with actually finding the right applicants using those tools? How has that changed with regards to actual recruitment?
I think that one of the key things is interviewing people remotely and accepting that you might hire someone without actually meeting them in person. Law firms...
Weird concept.
Definitely for law firms, very traditional. The experiences I had were processes were quite long. It would always involve people having to go into face-to-face meetings, never on online meetings, and often meeting a lot of people and there would be problems with that. People can't make the meeting. There would be issues in terms of delay and deals not happening. So during COVID, particularly, things exploded and people started to get comfortable with hiring people remotely. I've hired people myself that I didn't meet for 9 months during COVID who've actually done really well. So it's just changed the mindset. It's definitely possible. But I think it's gone back a little bit after COVID where people do want to meet someone in person if they possibly can.
Yeah.
But maybe it isn't necessary to fly them to another country to meet them. They'll do that remotely. But that combination seems to work best. Firms that didn't have sort of internal databases or tech for dealing with processes of candidates coming through the door and tracking them, that's increased as well. A lot of entities we deal with now have beefed up their internal recruitment teams. It used to be relatively rare that people would have
their own recruitment
team, but now, the majority would have it. So those people, because they've had investment made, they're now investing in the tech as well. So that can be testing tech. It could be video interview technology where, rather than having someone come in and meeting 10 people, they could prepare a video answering questions and then that's circulated.
Send the presentation, send that in advance, circulate it, save on time.
Exactly.
And then do the final interview maybe later on.
That's right. Also using technology for companies to advertise their roles, across things like LinkedIn, and being able to manage funnels of candidates and track candidates, do their own research. That's definitely increasing as well. So I think advertising technology's got a way to go, but it is having an effect on the market. Recruiters themselves have to stay ahead. We have to, it is partly about relationships and knowledge of the markets and managing processes. If you're just somebody who feels in recruitment that you get someone's CV and you send it off and you wait for something to happen, I mean, that is not going to be a good model going forward. You've got to offer a lot more service than that, and using technology is one way in which you can keep clients happy.
Yeah.
I would say that, still law firms are relatively conservative. Unlike in some industries, they're very used to video interviews, things moving very fast. Law firms...
Less rigid, less formal, probably.
Yeah.
Law firms, I would assume, are extremely formal, still rigid. The old habits are very very hard to discard.
To some extent, yes. Particularly at high-level hiring, partner-level hiring or GC-level hiring. But for partner-level hiring, it can be very traditional because you've got very senior partners making these decisions. And so it can still take a year to make a placement, which is somewhat ridiculous if you think about it. And I think that will have to change, because if you want to be competitive for talent, you've got to be able to move relatively fast, or you're going to miss out.
Or they will find another opportunity.
Find another one. Yeah.
Working remotely. Up for Legal is a remote first company. So, and we believe that this model, it works very well for us. And we think it does work very well. And we've created the tech that allows people to work remotely. But from your perspective, post-COVID, are we seeing companies not just going back to, not just using hybrid, let's say, working environments? Do they really want to go back to the old traditional, be in the office by 9, don't leave before 6, make sure you're there? I mean, things have changed. I think the world has proven that just being somewhere physically does not mean you're actually doing the job. It's the talent behind that person. So are you seeing things moving back to the traditional way, going back to the offices, not wanting to even do the hybrid route? Renormalizing what used to be normal before COVID.
I personally am a big fan of hybrid or remote working. My preference is probably hybrid working, because I do feel it's important to...
It's fun also.
Either your colleagues, go into the office. So for my company, we have people going in 2 days a week. However, it's somewhat flexible. So we also have people that don't go in at all if they live very remotely or in another country.
Or they're developers. Usually developers tend to want to stay in their caves. So you don't really need to force developers to go to the office.
I think if you're flexible and you recognize people's circumstances, so, If some people have small children, or they live far away, it's very difficult for them to get into an office. You've got to be more flexible. But it's not so difficult in an industry like recruitment. It can be more difficult, obviously, in other industries. For law firms and legal departments, there's a huge disparity in what people are doing right now. And it's led from the top. So if someone is very traditional and they feel that people will be lazy if they're working remotely and they can't track them, they might insist they come in 5 days a week. If someone is used to a more tech-focused environment, then remote working is no surprise at all, to have that model. I think it's very important for firms to be somewhat flexible because they will lose out on staff.
And very good talent as well.
After COVID, there was a boom in hiring, and employees really could kind of dictate much more of what they wanted to do. And companies and law firms kind of let them do that. Then with the power shift a little bit as the market changes, people are taking advantage to say, no, we're going to be doing it this way now. And they're prepared to lose some people along the way. But being very rigid, I think, is a mistake because you're going to lose good talent. And often people will come to us and we say to them, what kind of working environment do you want? And remote working is a really important factor for a lot of people, or flexible working.
Because it does create kind of balance between your work and your life. Less time commuting, more time for you to do some of your hobbies, explore new things. It brings better work-life balance, and that balance creates happier employees.
Totally. It's very good for families.
And it's very good for families,
The people that tend to enjoy it most are those that have long commutes into a city. They've got to deal with families. For those like younger guys that we have working for us, some of them it's been difficult during COVID. They've been in apartments, maybe one room, and I think it's actually not very good for them to be in that room 5 days a week.
I agree.
But it's horses for courses. Honestly, some people really like working from home. Some people don't. Some people like a bit of it. Some people not. Previous in my life and career, I've had to commute into London 5 days a week, early train, late train, getting back 8, 9 o'clock at night, not seeing the family.
You lose 3-4 hours just on the road.
But that became totally normal. Everyone was totally used to that. But when it changed, people realized, hold on a minute, there's another way, and they don't want to change that.
And they don't want to go back to that.
You're going to lose good people. I think it's very unhelpful with people like Elon Musk saying you have a duty to get into the office. I think it's a strange message to send to people. It's not selfish for people to want to have flexibility or remote working to some extent, because, as you say, it makes them feel better in their lives, and then therefore they can be more productive when they are working. So I would say, hybrid and flexible is the way forward.
Hopefully it keeps on going the way. I think it's better overall for people to have that kind of balance.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of is it for us for today, Jeremy. So thank you for coming. Hopefully we can see you soon. We'll have like we said, a broader discussion about AI for the next one and all the changes that are happening. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodina.
Everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.